Abolish the Federal Reserve. Subtitled, The Federal Reserve Made Simple. A presentation of Abolish Productions. Delivered on July 4th, 2011. My name is Ralph Epperson, and I will be the one presenting this material today. I'm a writer, researcher, and historian who has studied over 200 years of America's history for nearly 50 years of my life. I'm a graduate of the Business College at the University of Arizona, but what I will be discussing today was not presented to me while I was a student there. It has come from independent research into the subjects I've written about. I published my book entitled The Unseen Hand in 1985, and it is still being printed today. And in fact, much to my surprise, I was asked by publishers in 6 foreign nations for permission to publish it in their language, in their country, and I gladly provided it. But the information that I will be discussing today, as I said, was not offered to me in my business courses, but in fact I was generally presented with just the opposite information from what I've discovered in my independent study. And as I am hoping, you will begin to see that those who gave us the Federal Reserve System did not want us to learn the truth for a very important reason. Let me start by explaining that all of us are teachers in America's largest university. Everyone in America is our student body. Every building in America is our campus. And every conversation we have is a classroom lecture. In other words, we need to become educated so that we can educate others. And the reason that we need to be educated is simply because America is in serious trouble. And the solution is education. So this DVD will be a class entitled The Federal Reserve Made Simple, because I believe that the average American knows little about the Federal Reserve and how it does not serve our interests. And that is why I prepared this presentation. A good place to start would be in the scriptures to show that 2 enormous truths are revealed in its pages. The first is from 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all evil. Notice that it is not money itself, it is the love of money. Money has no morality, it is neutral, but it does have the ability to be of service to mankind. But it can also be used to destroy, as we shall soon see. And the second comes from Proverbs chapter 22, verse 7. The borrower is servant to the lender. We are going to talk about the borrowers and the lenders during this presentation. I believe the next thing we must do is define the 2 words directly related to money. The first is inflation. Inflation allows you to carry money in a basket and your goods in a wallet. Inflation allows you to live in a more expensive neighborhood without moving. Inflation is the price we pay for all of those government benefits we thought were free. I want you to know that this is the last time I'll buy some jokes from off of the internet. Those jokes are not very funny, but they do show that inflation does have a price to pay. First of all, let me give you a traditional definition of the word. This comes from page 13 of a booklet entitled The American Economic System and Your Part in It, published by the Advertising Council. This is how they define the word. Inflation is a rise in the general level of prices. Then it goes on to explain that there were 3 basic causes of inflation. The first is when consumers, businesses, and governments spend too heavily on available goods and services, this high demand can force prices up. The second way is if costs of production rise and producers try to maintain profit levels, prices must increase. And the third is the lack of competition between producers can also contribute to inflation. In other words, there's but one cause of inflation, and that is people. We, the people, are the guilty ones who cause inflation. Notice that there is no mention of the real cause, and that cause is the Federal Reserve, as I will now try to prove. Let me give you the dictionary definition of the word. It is defined as an increase in the quantity of money. Inflation always produces a rise in the price level. Therefore, inflation has a cause and an effect. The cause is an increase in the money supply, and the effect is a rise in the price level. Notice that the people do not have the ability to print money to increase the quantity. When people increase the money supply by printing it, it is called counterfeiting, and it is a crime against property rights. Money is property, and when someone counterfeits the money supply, it decreases the value of the real money, meaning the property in money in circulation, and it is a form of stealing. Stealing is defined as taking property from another without permission. And in America, stealing is punished by our legal system. In other words, counterfeiting is a crime called stealing. But when the Federal Reserve increases the money supply by printing money, it is not called counterfeiting. It is called funding the deficit, even though the two crimes are identical. Funding the deficit is a crime against property rights and should be punished, just like you and I would be if we increased the money supply. When I was in my business college economics classes at the University of Arizona, my professors explained that this dictionary definition was wrong. I was taught that inflation was caused by cost push, demand pull, unions, shortages, housewives, etc. In other words, we really do not know what causes inflation. All we know is that people cause it, but we don't know how they do it. That is what I was being taught. Yet we learned in the dictionary definition that it is caused by an increase in the money supply. So one of these definitions is in error. Someone is not telling the truth. So if the people cannot increase the money supply without being guilty of a crime, we must look for some agency that can increase the money supply without being guilty of a crime, and we shall soon identify the culprit. There's another word we must define, and that is the word deflation. Deflation is defined as a decrease in the money supply causing prices to drop. Perhaps the best way I can explain how this works is by using this simple illustration. I live in Tucson, Arizona. Let's just say that a fleet of helicopters fly over the city at 3 in the morning and drop out billions of American dollar bills. The next morning, when people find the new money, they will want to spend it, and they will visit stores in the city. They will want to purchase items that they could not afford in the past. When great numbers of people show up at a store with a lot of money, the people bid up the prices of the available goods. Let's say that the people are trying to buy a high-definition television set with a regular price of $1,000. When the people show up, The first bid will be for $1,000, the next will be for $1,100, the next $1,200, etc., until the price could be as high as maybe $4,000 or $5,000. It all depends on how much money has been found by the highest individual bidder. In other words, prices will increase with an increase in the money supply. And prices can really rise high if there are billions of new dollars in circulation. Prices could reach into the millions of dollars for the television set. As I said, it just depends on how many dollars were dropped from the air. There is a word to describe this condition. It's called hyperinflation, defined as excessive inflation causing a large increase in prices. Then let's just say that 1 week later, those who dropped all of the new money from the helicopters come to collect it because it was counterfeit. They would also gather up all of the real money that they could find because they would have to certify that it is not counterfeit as well. The result of all this is that there will be a rapid drop in the money supply, and to induce sales, merchants will lower their prices. It is even possible for the price to drop below the original price. Now there is a reason that nations hyperinflate their currency. It was described by John Maynard Keynes, called by many as the most influential economist of the 20th century. This is what he wrote in his book entitled The Economic Consequences of the Peace in 1920. Lenin, the communist leader of Russia, is said to have declared that the best way to debauch the capitalist system, to destroy the capitalist system was to debauch the currency. And then he told us how to do that. By a continuing process of inflation. So notice here that he is defining inflation just like the dictionary does an increase in the quantity of money. So by this process of inflation, government can confiscate, secretly and unobserved, an important part of the wealth of their citizens. By this method, they not only confiscate, but they confiscate arbitrarily. And while the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some. There is no subtler, no surer means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction. Now notice here that Mr. Keynes just said that inflation is an economic law, which means that prices will rise whenever the money supply is increased. It will happen each time it is practiced on every continent and in all economic systems. Now let me return to the Keynes quotation. He continued, and does it in a manner not one man in a million is able to diagnose. Let me try and summarize what Mr. Keynes just taught us. Nikolai Lenin, the communist, said if you want to destroy the capitalist system, you must first debauch the currency. And communists worldwide want to destroy the capitalist system. And the way to do that is through the printing press. Print large quantities of money and pump it into the marketplace, and it will destroy the value of money. And to show you that Lenin did debauch the currency by the process known as inflation, he increased the quantity of money nearly 20,000 times from 1921 to 1923. This is a cartoon that appeared in the Chicago Tribune newspaper on April the 21st, 1934. Notice the year, 1934, and it provides in a capsule form just what this strategy of the communist is.